to give me things to just break.
That are not expensive though.
That are very expensive. Like if we're buying a new camera, we buy two. One for me to break for the video and one to film the video on.
Dude, I wonder if Airy would be down with that.
That's what I'm
Do
saying.
you think they'd give us a 3.5 that we could just
I think companies would be about it.
Off a building?
They'd be like, we have to send them two because Scooter always breaks shit, and then they do a Tech Tuesday on it, and it's great. Welcome to another Tech Tuesday. Today, we're not breaking anything, unfortunately. We're talking about computers and PCs.
What's up?
This is Charles's favorite thing, guys. I mean, the second I met him on set, he was asking, like, do you play video games? Do you have a PC? Do you edit? And like was getting right into it, asking me computer specs and everything else. And at the time, I didn't have a PC. I was more your like laptop kind of Apple guy, your everyday user, editing kind of vlogs and that YouTube style social media content.
And then you saw the light.
And then I saw the light. Charles put me down the rabbit hole. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing that you showed me this world. But yeah, so this is Charles's PC, and as you see here, we have a few examples.
This, not this.
They're probably wondering, are those computers, or is that like some mega tech device that's bigger than...
Yeah, these are like...
huge, something huge.
Robots.
Yeah, when I first saw yours, I was like, is that a computer? What is that thing?
It's cool, that's what that is.
But yeah, you're probably at a point in your, if you're watching this video, you're probably at a point where you're like, hey, I'm getting into editing. Maybe you've been an editor and you're stepping into maybe feature films or some bigger projects where you maybe are limited by the computer you have. Or maybe you're just in the market and you don't know if you want to go Mac or PC. I mean, there's so many avenues in this market and there's so many mistakes you can make and money you can waste. So hopefully we can answer some questions. Yeah, I wasted a lot of money and Charles was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Let me help you. So
let's get into that.
Let's dive into it.
So like right off the bat, the question is, should you buy a Mac or should you build and or buy a PC, right? And what's your experience with that, Scooter?
I would say for me, if you're an everyday user, if you don't have the time or patience to more or less dive into things that are very like, you can set them up, very customizable. If you want something that's just right off the shelf, you can plug and play and use it, kind of like your iPhone when you go into your cellular store and they just give it to you and it works. That's kind of your Mac. And then your PC is going to be a little bit more in depth. You're going to have to do a little bit more research. Maybe you're building some parts. Maybe you're having someone build it for you, but you have to know certain parts go with certain things and you have to kind of know what that is.
There's more research involved with the PC world. And I'd say like, if you just want something that works and you don't really want to like think about it, like Scooter said, the Apple is kind of the way to go. Yeah. You're going to pay for it though, because Apple computers are more expensive.
That is the most expensive laptop I think I've ever purchased. And at the time it was because I didn't have a PC. I haven't built this yet. And I needed something with some power because I was editing some bigger projects and I kind of just knew the Apple world, so I was kind of limited to that factor where I was overpaying to stuff all this stuff into a laptop when really, for kind of a comparable price, I was building like a way bigger system. Now, obviously, there's your differences between a laptop or a desktop, but yeah. Yeah,
and so it's what I would do and what I would recommend to people is kind of think about what you want to do as far as like, do you like being techie and gadgety or do you just need something right now that works? And if that's the case, then I would say get an Apple laptop because it's going to be the most beneficial. Like we use both. We use laptops, we use PCs, we use Apple, and everything's intermingled and intermixed. And so like different situations require different things, kind of like when we use different cameras for different things. And so it just depends. But if you're a student just starting out, I highly recommend an Apple laptop versus a PC laptop. I think this is going to get you more bang for your buck, even though it is more expensive. I think this will last longer.
And they just came out with the M2 Max chips, I believe.
M3.
Or M3 chips now?
Yeah, M3.
I need to upgrade already. And that's the problem with Mac, guys, is right there. I just learned that there's already a new upgrade for the laptop that I just maxed out and purchased a year ago. And so now you're in this situation where do I go trade it in? lose money that way. You can't really take it apart and upgrade it as nowhere near as easily as you could on a desktop and PC. You're even limited to those factors in an Apple desktop, as in you're not taking this thing apart and upgrading it. You're really just limited to what you're buying in that year. And it seems like Apple's coming out with stuff so frequently, they're kind of hurting their users in a way, because you're spending all that or huge investment, and then in a year you're outdated and it probably drops at least 50% in value.
And that's a good point, Scooter. Is it's always important when you're purchasing electronics is to spend the most money that you can afford at that time, and make sure that you're buying the best components that you can afford at that time. Because in a year from now, like, those same components are going to be cost half as much, and there's going to be something that's 2 to 3 times faster next year.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's like, you just buy the best that you can afford at the time, and then don't think about it until you're ready or you need to upgrade.
Yeah, and I was kind of faced with that as well, and that's kind of a catch-22 there, because with PC parts, they're coming out, there's so many companies and so many upgrades and things you can do, and we were having this conversation before the video, is when you're upgrading a PC, you need to really think about, there's kind of that, you were saying 20 to 50% rule. As things are coming out, you want to at least have that like 50% upgrade in a PC, because there's a lot of things that can give you a 5, 10, 20% like little upgrade, but it may not be worth it. It may be worth the wait until that like following year, that like, because there's the 3090, the 3090 Ti's, and then they came out with the 4080s. And if you have a 3090 Ti, it may not be worth grabbing a 4080 at that time.
Scooter's talking about graphics cards inside of PC. With a Mac, the graphics card is built into the CPU,
yep.
And it's kind of all in one. On a PC, depending on what level that you are at, you can get a graphics card that's built into the CPU as well. Or if you need more horsepower, then you can get a separate GPU, such as the NVIDIA RTX 20 whatever, or 30s. We're at the 40s now. Next year is the 50s.
And there you have it. So there's a lot of upgrades and things coming out that you need to keep an eye on. But I think we divide it. I think let's knock out Mac and then kind of get Mac out of here, and then we kind of dive into the PC world.
I think we already got Mac out of here.
Is Mac done?
Mac's done.
All right, we're out.
Laptop. That's all I would recommend. Anything outside of a laptop for a Mac is for like editing and doing what we do. I don't feel like it's worth it. And the sole reason why is because money.
Yeah, I would say if you're buying a Mac desktop, they make the little box.
The Studio.
The Studios that are a little bit more powerful.
A lot more powerful.
But
it's not worth it. For I think by the time you rig it out the way that it should be, like, you max it out, because the way that they work is they limit, if you go with the lower end processor, it limits how much access it can have to their unified memory.
Yeah.
And the unified memory is shared between the CPU, which on a PC, that's your RAM, and it's also shared between your graphics card. On a PC, that's your VRAM in your graphics card. In Apple, on their new higher end stuff, they share it between both of those.
Yep.
And with the lower end processors, they limit how much access your CPU and your GPU have to your RAM. So if you put 126 gigs, I think, in the Studio is what you can put in there, of RAM, your CPU only has access to like 30% of that or 40% of that. I don't know the exact numbers, but they do limit it. And so you have to fully max out those things. So you're looking at like $6,000 or $7,000 for a 12-core computer. That is ridiculous, because this is a 32-core computer with a faster graphics card, and it costs exactly the same. So this is actually 4 times faster than the most expensive Apple computer that you can purchase.
Yeah.
And it costs less.
And not to mention, when a new product comes out, say next year, I can upgrade my graphics card, and I'm only spending the amount of the best graphics card out there, instead of having to walk into Apple, trade it in, or try to sell it to somebody online and convince them that you haven't destroyed it on a trip or something. It's like, if you want the best bang for your buck, PC is the option. Now, if you're like me you're really like hesitant going into that world because you're like, okay, there's so many things. What are you talking about? VRAM, processors, motherboards. Like, I'm not an electronics person. I don't want to spend $6,000, put it together and it not work. What do I do? How do I begin going down that road? Where do I start?
Yeah, I say if you're interested in building your own PC, if you're like super techie and you want to learn all that stuff, I would say head on over to like Linus Tech Tips. Or Jay's 2 Cents, like there's a bunch of YouTube guys out there that have videos and they tell you in great detail, better than I ever could, on how to build a PC. Now, if that's not something that interests you, but you still want to get the best bang for your buck, then I would say do a little bit of research and find out like how heavy of a computer you need or how much processing power you need for your computer, and then just go to the store and buy one, whether that's a Dell, or like you can hop online. There's manufacturers that might be local in your neighborhood of people that have deals for you to buy a computer that you can find, or just, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say if you have the funds, something that could be fun is get like a used PC off of like Marketplace and like pull it apart, put it back together, maybe find some parts and put them in and kind of dive into that world and get comfortable. For me, it was like just touching a motherboard and like pushing a graphics card into it. I was like, am I gonna snap these little things? And Charles was like, no, it's meant for that, like push it in.
Yeah.
But my biggest advice would be, guys, don't be scared, dive into it. There were a few days where Charles wasn't able to make it over to the studio while I was building this thing. Parts came in and I did not want to wait, and so I got onto YouTube University, found a bunch of videos from all these creators, and guys, hundreds of videos. I ran most of my cooling by myself. I think I put in all the water cooling that day. I was FaceTiming Charles, watching YouTube videos.
And how hard was it though?
It really wasn't that hard. Once I like got over the fact of like I'm touching the electronics and I'm inside the PC and just trusted that like that's what PCs are meant for. They build these parts for you to put them in your PC, take them out. Like once I got over that factor, it's easy.
Yeah, it really is. And so like don't let building a PC like discourage you from purchasing one. That being said, there's plenty of manufacturers out there online to where if you just want something, go to like Puget Systems. They actually have a system set up where you can like tell them what you want to do as far as like, oh, I'm a Premiere editor, or I'm a Resolve colorist, or I'm doing like 3D animation. And you can tell them what you want to do on their online software, and then they will recommend parts for a computer that would work in that scenario. And so like, and there's a bunch of other companies out there. They're just one because I love their information that they do, and they do a lot of testing.
Well, I've never met someone who loves PCs that doesn't like talking about their PC build or like giving out information about it. Just like us camera nerds, guys, computer people are the same way. And so find people on Instagram, find other people that are doing it on YouTube, reach out to them, ask them. My guess is they've ran into the same problems or they've had those same things. A big thing for me before I went down this path was like when I was exporting something more VFX heavy versus just editing a video. I was like, why can I edit this feature film perfect, but I can't export this VFX? And Charles was diving into more of the specifics of why, and that helped me understand like PCs and these computers work in different ways, and different programs pull from different parts of the computers in different ways. And so once I kind of got my head around that, then you're able to shove more like RAM into your computer, like get a higher graphics card. If you know what you need, it like will make your build that much better.
Yeah, so let's talk specs. Everybody wants to know, what are we editing on? How much power do we have in our computers? How much power do you need?
These things weigh like 75 pounds. What are we doing over here, Charles?
What's the difference between these?
They're huge. This one's a little smaller. What are we looking at? Yeah,
so as far as like, you need to figure out what you're editing in or what you're editing on, I would say. If you're just shooting like, if you're editing like Sony DSLR kind of stuff, like Canon DSLR, if those are the kind of footage that you're doing, then honestly, like a 12-core AMD or like Intel. Wow, my brain just like cut out right there.
Yeah.
Something like 12 cores Intel that's like faster clocks. You could probably even get away with like a 3080 or a 4070 graphics card inside of it. And I would say 16 to 32 gigs of RAM. Now, if you jump up into the next level and now you're editing like full-length feature films instead of YouTube videos or shorts, you're editing like ARRI RAW, Sony RAW. Blackmagic is a pretty light codec, and actually, so like a lot of these laptops and like smaller like core count PCs can actually handle it really good.
I was just about to say, like, Red just came out with their new stuff, and it handles like crazy. These new M2 and now I guess M3 chips, like, it's crazy how fast they export the footage. So that's pretty cool. If you're limited to more a laptop, you're not, per se, not going to be able to do things. But.
Yeah. So when you find yourself like jumping up to the next level, then I would say let's start bumping it up. And honestly, the new AMD processors that are like 12 to 24 counts that are in like the 4 to 5 gigahertz range for a processor is going to be plenty, like more than enough if you're just editing. And then also like a 3080, a 4070. The 4080 is not, it's kind of a dumb graphics card.
Why is that?
Because
my brain goes 3070, 4080, bigger number, better card.
It's newer, yes, but the cost doesn't outweigh how new it is, if that makes sense.
So kind of back to that 50-20 rule we were talking about, where if you're not getting that full 50% upgrade, maybe it's not worth that 20% for how much that maybe.
Yeah, performance-wise, it's exactly the same as a 3070 or 38. What did I say?
3090.
No, the 4080
is
as powerful as a 3070.
A 3090 is more powerful than a 4080?
Yes.
And why would that be?
That's just what AMD did.
Okay.
It's dumb.
That's how it is.
Yeah.
Because for the average user, I hear those numbers and I just think bigger, better.
Yeah. And I would say, like, get online, do your research, like, just try to, find out what you think is what's in your price point. Even you can pick up a used 3090 for like $1,000 or around there. And as opposed to like a brand new 4090, which you're going to be looking at
4080
4090. So 3090 to a 4090.
Oh,
right.
There's so many. See, guys, this is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I've purchased them. I've been in this world, and it still confuses me. So if you can't wrap your head around it, don't be discouraged, because that is not a reason to not dive into PCs.
Yeah. If you want the biggest and the baddest graphics card that you can game on too, is the 4090. It has 24 gigabytes of VRAM. And it's hella fast. 39 teraflops, I think, of processing power, which is insane, right? Looking at you, Apple, even with their most expensive one, is only at like 16. I can't remember what the numbers were. It's daunting, though. And so, anyways, what I do recommend, though, is when you bump up and you start editing like big feature films that are shooting like ARRI RAW with the higher data rates, you kind of need to start getting into a system that can handle those big, massive video files. And that means that you're buying the best graphics card, whether that's a 4090 or if you're jumping into an A6000 graphics card, which those are big, big money for them. Typically, the RTX cards are going to be good enough for what we do as far as editing. And then RAM, I would say you need at least 32 gigs, if not 64 or 100. And I say 64 to 100 if you're editing and or color grading 8K RAW from like a Sony Venice or Venice 2. Like, you kind of need the processing power. I ran into that on this machine. I have 64 gigs of RAM, and I was maxing out my RAM coloring an 8K Sony Venice 2 because we shot an XOC NXT, which is their like biggest format. And I was running out of chewed up 64 gigs of RAM like it was nobody's business.
Yeah,
so,
most people would look at that PC and be like, no way, that was overpowered. And it's crazy how, just as long as you're looking at those numbers and what program's pulling from what part in the computer, like, as long as you know that information and then you're dialing your build in for that, you can save a lot of money in certain places and still get that max performance.
Yeah,
doing the research.
And I would easily say that probably like 70% of you guys that are watching this video, this computer is going to be good enough. water cooling is so freaking cool, and it's a lot of fun. That opens up a whole nother can of worms. And so I would say something like this, if you're just getting started, or even if you're halfway into your career, like you probably don't need something that's as crazy and as spec'd out as these two machines are right here. Something like, you know, a 7900, you know, AMD processor that's like 12 or 24 cores with 32 gigs of RAM and a 3090 or a 4090 GPU. Like you're doing 90% of the stuff that you're ever going to work on.
Yeah. Just remember the in and out rule when it comes to fans. You're probably seeing that we have a lot of fans here. The biggest mistake I see in PC builds when temperatures and you're running your specs and making sure everything's good, they're like, oh, my computer's so warm, or it's overheating, or different things, or you'll hear them sound like a spaceship blasting off or something. That's pretty normal, but just remember, guys, use a piece of paper. Make sure you have really good pressure. You should be sucking in air into the PC, and then it should be pushing out air. A lot of people just suck in a bunch of air, and then it's all just
doesn't have anywhere to go.
Doesn't have anywhere to go or escape. So yeah, if you feel anywhere on my vents, you can like really feel it sucking in, and then you can really feel it pushing out on all the spots. So just make sure you have that good in and out airflow.
Yep, I actually fried a motherboard in this case because the way that I had it designed is it was trapping all of the fresh air inside of it, and then my motherboard overheated and it melted something, and I couldn't get it to boot back up, and I had to replace the motherboard. And so you want to make sure that when you build your PC or when you get a PC that you have more fans blowing air in to keep the static pressure, and that'll help with dust, and then at least 1 or 2 fans blowing out to like help extract that hot air.
Yep. Well, hopefully we answered most of you guys' questions. I'm sure you probably have a million more, and we probably made you more confused than when we started, because when I went down this road, I was super overwhelmed. But get you a friend like I have, get Charles who knows all the stuff, and then just bug the living hell out of them. And I think when we were building this, you literally came over like every day for 2 weeks straight.
Yeah, I did. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
When you're building custom water-cooled PCs, like it's a lot of work.
But I will admit, the PC world has come up like crazy with all the gaming and streaming and stuff. You can now go to Best Buy and buy like a fully decked out PC that's like badass with all these RGB lights, and they're pretty cool to where those types of machines may be a great start into the PC world, to where maybe you're not just ordering a bunch of parts online and putting it together.
Totally. And so like basically what it comes down to is if you want the most bang for your dollar, PC is going to be it. If you want something that's just going to work right off the shelf and you don't have to think about it, then an Apple, and I would recommend a laptop, because you can like still take it. Like we still take our Apple laptops when we travel. This is what we travel with to edit and to do our stuff on the road. But when it comes to like feature films, editing, coloring feature films, then we're sitting on these big, massive PCs because they have the horsepower to like power through those big data rates.
Yeah, there'll be times where I'll do an edit on a Mac on the road or something and bring it home, or wait specifically to export on my PC, because something that could take up to 12 hours takes 30 minutes on this thing. So
cool. Well, hope you guys learned something. If so, please, or you have comments or questions, please leave them down below, and we'd love to hear what you have to say. And then also check out some of our other videos and see what you can learn.
And we have a massive project coming out soon that I did the VFX on, and Charles also colored on, and that should be coming out in the next few months, maybe to the public, maybe longer, but stay tuned for that, guys. It was pretty cool. We used these exact PCs to color that and edit that feature film. So.
Yeah. All right, see you later.